Hi, I'm Tom Luna. I'm a former school board member. I was privileged to serve as senior advisor to U.S. Secretary of Education Rod Page. I also had the honor of serving for 8 years as Idaho State Superintendent of Public Instruction. During that time, I also served as president of the Council of Chief State School Officers. One thing I have learned in all these experiences is that educating children is not rocket science, it's more complicated. On my podcast, Swimming Upstream, we will visit with courageous leaders who challenge the prevailing tide and inspire all of us to swim against the current. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another episode of Swimming Upstream with your host, Tom Luna. And folks, we're beginning season number 2, and we're so excited about the opportunity to have state leaders from around the country talk to us about the things that they're focusing on that improve education in their states and some of the obstacles that they maneuvered as they were going about this important work. And today, our special guest is Kathy Anthes. And Kathy is the former commissioner of education for the great state of Colorado. And Kathy, you and I have known each other for a long time. And our terms overlapped each other. But we're going to take a few minutes and learn a little bit more about you. And I'm going to start by just saying that, about a dozen superintendents around the country are elected and some are appointed. You're an appointed state chief, and you've served longer than most because as an appointed, you're not serving a specific term. You really serve at the will of a board, and yours is an elected board. So congratulations on that. And tell us a little bit more about your background quickly that led up to you being the commissioner there in Colorado.
Sure. Well, thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be here. So I served as the Colorado commissioner for about 7 years. I just stepped down. My last day was yesterday, but I was helping the new commissioner transition. I worked at the Colorado Department of Education a couple years prior to becoming commissioner in senior executive roles, working on educator effectiveness and other work there. But I come into education from a slightly different perspective. I haven't had the traditional route of being a teacher and administrator. I really worked on education research and then worked in the policy world. So we're always thinking about public policy and what is high quality public policy and how can we create that and create the enabling conditions to have that help our systems at the ground level. So I came into the commissionership. My board asked me to step in as an interim, and I was interim for 6 months, and then they appointed me commissioner, and 7 years later, here we are. I'm ready to take a little bit of a rest.
Well, interesting. You and I have a similar background. I never had the opportunity to be a teacher or an administrator. I came from a different route also, and we're seeing more and more commissioners, state superintendents, either elected or appointed around the country that come from different routes than just the traditional teaching route. What were some of the things that you did when you took office, knowing that with all the experience you brought, you didn't bring classroom experience, you didn't bring district leadership experience with you to office?
Yeah, well, that's an important point. And I was definitely aware of that coming in. And I told my board that coming in too. But I think the most important thing as a leader is to be self-reflective about where your blind spots are. And I was really aware that that was a blind spot. I never proclaimed to anyone, especially teachers, that I know what their job is like. And what I did is tried to fill my blind spots. So I said, I know policy better, but I don't know instruction as well. So that means I need to hire people around me that have really high quality instruction and that have been teachers before and that know that work. And so that's what I did. I created a team, a really strong team, and then we all filled each other's blind spots. And I think that brings a good diverse sense of opinion and perspective and pathways.
Yeah. And then the important thing is you listen to them, right?
You got to listen.
Teachers of the year, superintendents of the year, there's great people out there that have that experience. It kind of reminds me of the book about Abraham Lincoln, Team of Rivals, right? Yeah. Where he brought in the people that had the skills and experience he didn't. Yeah. And that's a great, because if we're talking about swimming upstream, if you've never had a classroom experience, you and I both know this, classroom experience or district leadership experience, and you want to be able to have a working positive relationship with those in the classroom and those at the district level, they definitely need to understand that you recognize what your strengths are and what you bring to the table, and also recognize their strengths. And so that's the way you navigate that, right?
Yeah. One of the important things I did was created a teacher cabinet. So I had a cabinet of teachers from around the state of Colorado. I also had a superintendent advisory group. And so, I spent days with those folks listening to what it was like on the ground and working with them that way. So.
Now, Katie, you mentioned earlier that you'd never been a teacher, but you recognize the importance of it. And one of the things that you focused on while in office was improving the programs that are out there that help prepare teachers, whether it's colleges of education or alternate routes that have been in place to help get quality people into the classroom. Talk to us about why that was important, some of the things you did, and then again, how you navigated the obstacles, especially to bring alternate routes into teacher certification.
Yeah, well, when you're a state leader, you have problems that you need to solve, and they have multiple aspects and components. And, sometimes they have competing values within those programs or within those problems. So it's like, we know every state is struggling with teacher shortage, so we need to get more teachers into the field. But we also need really high quality teachers. So you can't just open the pipeline completely. You need to make sure you maintain that quality. So Colorado, actually, I don't know if we are number one, but we have one of the highest numbers of alternative pathways to get into teaching. But hand in hand to that, we have a division at the Colorado Department of Education that reviews and accredits with the state board approval all programs. And a couple of years ago, probably about 5 years ago, we said, listen, we really have to make sure, number one, we're going to start working on math too, but number one, we need to make sure that the literacy, the strong foundations for literacy are in place for all of our teachers. And so we really started to increase the bar on what it took to be approved by our State Board of Education. And that same bar exists for alternative programs. So we have regional service areas that can create preparation programs. We have even schools and districts can create their own preparation program. And we also have traditional colleges and universities that have their traditional program, but they've also created alternative ones with residencies and those sorts of things. So we created really high quality review programs, and slowly but surely we had to approve programs with conditional approvals. And if they didn't improve their programs, they wouldn't be approved by the Board of Education. And so just recently, NCTQ came out and said that Colorado is the number one state for the type and quality of preparation programs for teachers, specifically to focus on scientifically based literacy instruction. So we're really proud of that. And it took us 5 years to get there because it's slow, methodical work. But I'm really proud of that. The team that did that at CDE and the Board of Education that stood firm on those expectations.
Yeah. So that's fantastic work. I think you've identified that when you're in a situation where you have a teacher shortage, and we've seen this teacher shortage coming for a decade, COVID definitely stomped on the gas and amplified it, right? And we also know that once a child enters the school, the most important factor in their child's academic success is the quality of the teacher in the classroom. So how do you, like you said, get more people into the profession without lowering the bar, right? So talk to us about one of the obstacles I've seen other states struggle with is that when you start talking about alternate routes, then the traditional colleges of education, that's their lane. That's what they do, and they do it well. And either they feel threatened or maybe even a little dismissed. If you start talking about alternate routes, like they're not doing their job or what have you, and they can get territorial a bit. So talk to us about how you navigated that resistance and pushback.
Yeah. Well, Colorado has, we have a long streak of independence and choice. Well, choices for different types of pathways for both students and professionals. And so we have had those alternative pathways for quite some time. So I'm not sure if I had to manage some of that pushback as much as maybe predecessors did. But I will say we had to manage some challenges around the increase in expectations.
Yeah.
We used to just frankly rubber stamp programs, just kind of be like, yep, you got the syllabus, looks good. Now we have a full team of people going into all the schools, all the alternative prep programs, observing classroom teaching, looking at the materials they're using, interviewing candidates, interviewing the hiring people of those candidates to make sure they were prepared. So we have a much more robust process. And that did create some pushback because they weren't used to that. So, it just took a lot of, we always went in with a spirit of collaboration saying, listen, we all want to get better. We can all agree on that. We can all agree that reading is the foundation for all other success. Yeah. And we want to do this together. We don't want to put you on the spot. This isn't a gotcha, but it is about getting better. And little by little, these things take time. Work moves at the speed of trust. And we had to prove to those programs that we were willing to come in and work side by side and roll up with our sleeves. And so over time, I have to give my credit to the team that did that because they went in with a helping hand and a collaborative partnership, and little by little, everybody came on board, and everybody wants to prepare the best quality teachers for our students.
That's wonderful. So real quick then, do you follow up then after a certain number of years with a program that's already been approved and they go through a similar type accreditation process, if you will, and just to demonstrate that they're still meeting the mark?
Yep. They have to get renewals, and they have to go through a process at least every 5 years.
Perfect. So let's shift again real quick and talk then about early literacy. You mentioned that when you're talking about teacher prep programs, that's an important component, that every teacher is well prepared to enter the classroom and help early learners to be literate, at least at their age level. Talk to us about other things that you did in Colorado. I know that's another place where Colorado has been recognized for some good work, is in early literacy.
Yeah, well, we had our legislature passed the Colorado READ Act probably about 7 years ago when I started. And then they did an update to the READ Act where they required all teachers to be trained in scientifically based reading. So that was one reason why we focused on ed prep programs, because we need to have all those teachers prepared. But we also had a bunch of teachers in the system already that needed to have that training. So we just completed a training program for all teachers across the state of Colorado in scientifically based reading. And similar to the ed prep programs, we need to see the results of that. We had a pandemic in the middle of it. So
that little thing.
Yeah, so the results aren't quite what we expected had the pandemic maybe not happened, but we are expecting to see some gains over time because of that intensive requirement and programs that we have instituted there. So, it was voted, this is a unique fact, I guess, it was voted by 100% of the legislative body.
Wow.
There was not one dissenting opinion. And that's actually a big deal because even though we can all agree on early literacy, like it meant that they all agreed on a specific type of teaching literacy. It meant that they all agreed on this is important enough to have it be a requirement because we know different types of legislators may believe in, the carrot approach or the stick approach. Well, they all agreed on this. It was a unanimous vote in the legislature.
I suspect, Katie, that's evidence also of the confidence they had in you and those leading education efforts in the state. I think one thing I read about you is that you were very active with the legislature, and I think that some state chiefs maybe don't make that connection soon enough. That the legislature, it is a political body, but they have so much control over the funding of education, not just how much, but how it's going to be spent. And then, like you said, programs like early literacy that need extra help and attention. So that's,
Well, they create the enabling environment for state chiefs to do their job. I mean, I don't have the authority without them, without a state law to give me the authority to do some of this work. So working hand in hand with them in partnership is just really critical. And I did spend a lot of my time trying to build trust in Colorado, and actually building that trust when something's not on the line, building relationships when you're not in that intensive political piece, just going to have dinner with people, going to get to know them as people. And then you have that trusted foundation from which to move from when you need to give each other advice or push back or push forward or whatever you need to do.
Yeah, that's perfect. If the legislature only hears from you when you have something you want from them, right? And it's always a crisis moment and the most important vote they'll ever make as a legislator type of a situation, it's tough to build that relationship. So I think that proves well. You probably experienced this when legislators would call us with every education question they had. We would always respond, regardless of whether it was an important thing for us. But then I knew, that they trusted us, right? We were the people they were calling, and I think that's the kind of relationship that you want and need. I want to shift gears again one more time and talk about, we talked about early literacy, and you mentioned earlier how that is the foundation of all learning. And so let's talk about high school then, right? Because I think if you do what you're supposed to do correctly in those early grades, then when kids get to high school, they'll have the ability and even the desire to take advantage of opportunities to do more than maybe more than they wouldn't be able to if they struggled in reading and math and things like that. So talk about the focus that you had when it came to high school and making sure that when students were there, that they saw relevance, if you will, to what they're learning and connecting it to what they see themselves doing after high school.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we really had a strong focus on what we would call sort of blurring the lines between high school, post-secondary, workforce, careers, apprenticeships. In order to get that relevance, I think students these days, and really students every day, really want to see what are they learning and how does it make a difference in their lives and what can it draw them to? What path can it paint for them moving forward? And so we really said we want to increase the number of options for our students in high school. We want to increase the relevance of high school. We want to build in work-based learning programs into high school. And, I have to give credit to our governor and our legislature on this one too. They are really helping us with that enabling legislation and enabling grants to say, we want to move towards every high school graduate in Colorado having at least an associate's degree when they leave. So that provides more choices for students no matter what they want to do. We would like it to be a meaningful associate's degree. So if they do want to go directly into a career, they can. But even if they want to go into four-year college or get a master's degree, they would at least have 2 years of that under their belt so they don't have to pay as much. They don't have to go into debt. So it's really a win-win-win for everyone. So we're trying to create more apprenticeships in Colorado. We're trying to create more work-based learning opportunities. We're trying to create more concurrent enrollment opportunities. And we want to sort of create it all. We also have fifth-year college programs where the high school extends into a fifth year, but then they come out with a meaningful credential where they can go right into career. So sure. We are exploring all sorts of ways, and that has, you know this from your past work, that has a lot of strings into different policies that you have to look at. School finance, how we fund students. We need to be more flexible in how we fund students so that students can get funding, even if they're taking a class in the college, or if they are getting work experience, that they could get funded for that work experience and apply it to their learning in high school. So we're looking at all that. We're looking at school finance. We're looking at credentials. We're looking at how to increase concurrent enrollment. And we're looking at how to put apprenticeships in high school programs now.
I've got a follow-up question, but first I want you to talk a little bit more about, tell us how the students are responding when they see these opportunities in high school.
They love it. I've visited so many programs. We have a couple innovation campuses here in the metro area where they are actually getting medical degrees, medical assistance degrees, mental health degrees, aviation repair, maintenance degrees, all sorts of things. And the kids, you go there, they are so engaged. They see the relevancy. They're working with their hands. They're understanding exactly what they're learning, how it's going to apply to their career path. And it gives them a lot of information and ideas about what more they want to learn. It fuels their desire to learn, as opposed to some of our old traditional sit and get class. It doesn't really fuel their desire to learn. But if you see kids working in a shop with a real airplane and they're doing maintenance on it, they're like, well, I could be a pilot, or I could be maintenance.
And here's what I need to learn if I want to do that, right? And so where do I find it? I want to learn more, right? If kids see relevance, rigor will take care of itself. But if they don't see relevance, it's hard to get them to perform at their highest levels. That's exciting. Talk to us about how you get those kinds of opportunities down into rural Colorado, right? I mean, that's swimming upstream,
swimming upstream.
Crack that nut.
So what we did, which we are super excited about, we had the unprecedented amount of federal funds come into the state from COVID relief. And you could use federal funds to re-engage students. And so we said, what if we incentivized rural districts who are next to each other, partnering together, because one rural district can't put an innovation center together like Cherry Creek School District can, or like St. Vrain School District can here in the metro area. But if you get partnerships with multiple school districts in a rural area, maybe like 4 or 5 within a half-hour radius, we gave multi-million-dollar grants to those districts who wanted to partner together to create, we call it rural co-action. So they're co-creating action together. One rural district may focus on a construction pathway. Another rural district may focus on a healthcare pathway. And then they work together to allow students to go back and forth to the districts and access those different pathways. So they don't have the money or the resources or the land or the buildings to create one big innovation center, but they can split it up and then share those resources among themselves. So we're just at the beginning of that, but we have incentivized several rural districts and regional service centers to create those opportunities for our rural students.
It'd be fantastic to watch and see how that plays out, right? Because you brought up one of the positive, I don't know if positive is the right word, but an opportunity that the funding from the COVID provided. During your 7 years in office, 3 of those years definitely were all driven by responding to COVID. And I would tell people that when I was in office, we dealt with the Great Recession, and that was difficult. That pales to what every state chief and educator and family dealt with, well, the nation dealt with when COVID hit. And so we know plenty of the negative challenges. I think I read where you made a comment that, it just took a lot out of you, right? And I can only imagine as a state chief how much time and effort and emotional that you spent, trying to deal with that. So, but talk to us about some of the, not necessarily the challenges, but how you work through that, and what can we learn from that as we deal with other challenges going forward in education?
Yeah. Well, one thing it forced me to do as a leader, and also our state government to do, is actually work together across state agencies. I had always wanted to do that as a leader, but I never had the time, I never had the time to figure out what all these other agencies did in the state. And well, COVID forced that. I am not an epidemiologist. I am not a doctor in that way.
Right.
We needed help. And the same is true for the health agency. They were not experts in education. They did not know how schools run. We were not all experts in logistics. So we had to work with the military, because the military are experts in logistics. So what it really did is it forced all of our state government to come together to say, we all have to bring our expertise together to help our communities.
Yeah.
So that was one thing it did. We have deep partnerships now with the Department of Human Services to provide wraparound supports, to do, our epidemiologists to know like what's happening when we have an outbreak of some kind, our military to get vaccines rolled out to local communities and rural places in a workable way. So that was one of the benefits of COVID, is I think we got to know state government much better and know where we can pull those leverage points when we need them.
Yeah, I think I love that. And hopefully we'll see that continue to go through, because there are those silos. And I love the way you described it. It's, it takes time and effort and energy, and the job of a state chief, and I'm assuming to be the director of all the other agencies that you just mentioned are all encompassing also. So we talk about these silos. They're often there not because people like them or they want them to stay there. It's just the time and effort necessary to engage with them. So hopefully that will be a byproduct that will benefit from.
It's that old quote, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah,
so other stuff will fill your time unless you have an emergency. And if you have an emergency, you need to learn how to work together.
Yeah, there you go. Well, listen, you've left a legacy there and some things that you'll look back on. And I will tell you, as a former chief, just the other day, a student thanked me for a program that we started that helped him get his associates before he graduated from high school. And it was just out of the blue, right? So this happens, you'll see that happen, and you'll be rewarded in that way. But what's next? What's next for Kathy Anthes?
Well, I am going to take a little bit of a break. I think, we're very blessed if we get the opportunity to take a break and do some reflection, because as you said, those jobs are all encompassing and you're just on to the next. You never get a chance to reflect on what you did and what you're passionate about and what you want to do next. So I am purposely taking 3 months off. My goal is to not say yes to anything for a little bit of time, because I want to reflect. I want to figure out where I want to move forward to, not be pulled toward. So I'm going to do that break, and I know I will be back in the education ecosystem in some way. I just want to take some reflection time to figure out where.
Yeah, one thing you're going to experience is all of a sudden the adrenaline's gone, and it'll take you a while to figure that out. That why am I feeling tired more than I used to? But yeah, the adrenaline rushes are gone. Yeah. But you've served very, very well, and appreciate you being here on Swimming Upstream. One last question. We ask all of our guests this, but share with us one fact or piece of trivia about Colorado that most people don't know.
Okay. Well, Colorado is a wonderfully geographically diverse state. So we have some of the highest mountains and wonderful plains and farm. But I will say Colorado has the highest paved road in any state in the national park system. So our Trail Ridge Road is in Rocky Mountain National Park, and it is the highest paved road, I think, at least in the 48 states. Maybe Alaska has one, but I
don't think they have many paved roads in Alaska.
Exactly. So there are probably, so I think we win that, but you can go up as high as you can into the tundra, and it's pretty cool if you ever get the chance.
Fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. And Kathy Anthes, thank you, former commissioner of Colorado by one day. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for all your work and dedication to the students of and the children of Colorado, and the impact it's had not only in Colorado, but across the country. Thank you for being a guest on Swimming Upstream.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And remember, our children may only be 22% of our population, but they represent 100% of our future. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform. Swimming Upstream is part of the Strategos Podcast Network. To view the entire lineup of our shows, visit our website, strategosgroup.com.